do want to acknowledge our elected officials. Mayor McDonough is here. Mayor Vincent. I don't know if there's any other officials here, but if you want to be acknowledged, please raise your hand and I'll introduce you. We're just here. This is part of the project. We're going to talk about what the bus stops look like. Everything's all proposed, but we want to hear the community's input about the bus stops and what these should look like to children, to talk about. They made a lot of posters and color things like that. So we just want to get everyone's input and idea. And I'll introduce you now to Deanna Murphy.
Thank you, Ty. Good evening, everyone. I'm Deanna Murphy with Sizemore Group. We've been the lead planning firm on this project. And we're going to take you through a brief presentation, and then what we want to do tonight is mostly get some hands-on exercises at the table. So we've got a series of questions we're going to ask, we've got maps, we've got images, and we just want to get information from you ultimately to help design 3 bus stops. We're looking at doing one design for one in Stockbridge, one in unincorporated Henry County, and one here in McDonough. And so we want to look at where those stops might be, that might be priority stops, and then ultimately what those could look like. So I want to give you some background information before we get started. I'll start with our overall agenda for tonight. So we'll go through this brief presentation. We'll go an overview of the project scope, our community engagement process to date, and what we're doing today and what we're trying to accomplish. And then we'll spend the first 20 minutes of our hands-on design session from about 6:20, I think we're running a little behind, so maybe 6:25 to 6:45, looking at our priority sites and making sure we understand contextually what that means and if those are the sites we want to focus on, and really starting to drill into what sites we want to be those 3 stops. Then we will do a group discussion where we'll go around to each table, hear what each table is talking about, make sure we're trying to then incorporate some of the ideas from other tables as well into our own table. And I'll talk about the tables in a minute. But then we'll do a second design session where we'll get a little bit more into the creativity of what those bus stops can look like. Then we'll have a final breakout session where we all get together, talk about what's being discussed at each table, get some key takeaways and next steps from there. And we're planning on getting you all out of here around 7:30. So project overview, we have a robust and wonderful team working on this project, many of whom are here tonight. As I mentioned, Sizemore Group, we're the lead planning and design firm on this. We have Dashboard represented here. We have both Abigail and Anna here tonight. Dashboard is a local arts nonprofit organization. And then we have VHB doing the transportation assessment and analysis. They're also simultaneously working on the bus route and bus stop location project, which is separate from this, but very related. So they are here to help oversee how these bus stops will be implemented. And then we have a landscape architect who unfortunately not here tonight, but we have Meridian Studios who is doing landscape architecture to help us with streetscape design, pedestrian access and whatnot for the bus stops. So I'd like to start most of our meetings off with this clip from the request for proposals that actually came out from the county, because it's a good understanding of what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is transit creative places. And that is to intentionally make transit stops into community amenities. They can function as safe and clean places to wait for the bus, as well as portals for information, locations for accessing needs, and venues for storytelling. This is our overall project schedule. I'm sure it's pretty small to read, but the gist of it is that we kicked off this meeting or this project in December. We're about halfway through. We've spent a lot of time, thank you. We spent a lot of time doing assessment of the existing stops. We've been talking to community members about what they want to see at a bus stop, what components they would like to see, what artistic elements are important for community members. So we have had a couple of community engagement opportunities, and we'll talk about those in a minute. We're at the point now where we are shifting towards design. So we have done a lot of assessment, and now we're trying to understand what these can look like. So this is really the kickoff to that tonight in terms of a design work session where we're going to sit at the tables and start to design and think and dream about what these bus stops can be. From here, we will start to refine those designs. We will then bring that back to the community and back to the Board of Commissioners at the county level to make sure that we're on track and that this really meets the needs. And we're looking at wrapping the overall project up in January of 2025. The project scope ultimately is to develop creative concepts for bus stops, as well as signage associated with those. We want to identify 3 different bus stops. So we're looking at, as I mentioned, one for each jurisdiction, one in McDonough, one in Incorporated Henry, and one in Stockbridge. And we want to look at how we can create beautiful, attractive, safe, and inviting bus stops. And so that will include the access and accessibility, but also the framework and policies to make sure that it can get implemented. So we will be looking at what the grant opportunities are to implement these and other funding sources. This is the overall bus route that the county has been working on, starting up here at the Park and Ride in Stockbridge, coming down Patrick Henry, to Judico, Oak Grove, down Jonesboro, into we hit McDonough, downtown McDonough. The overall project goals, and this was really instituted at the beginning of the project, is to make sure that we're engaging the community and the public and cultivating widespread support throughout this project, creating connectivity, accessibility, and safety, identifying funding sources, exploring phased approaches as well as short-term tactical approaches and long-term solutions, prioritizing equity throughout the process, and establishing placemaking as an asset for these communities. With the community engagement, I'm going to actually hand it off to Abigail from Dashboard to step us through what we've done in terms of engagement so far.
Thank you. Awesome. Hello, I've seen some of you before, but nice to see you again. And those that I haven't met, I'm Abigail. I'm project director at Dashboard. Dashboard is working with Sizemore for the artistic elements of these bus stops and community engagement, getting some local artists involved in feedback and the production of these bus stops. A lot of what we've been doing with Sizemore is things like this, community engagement, in order to hear from you all, from community members along this route on what you would like to see within each bus stop, whether that's safety, or is it an artistic beautification element, or is it information, access to information, or accessibility to the bus stop. These are all things that we have received as input already from your community by doing these different engagement programs. We've already held, one of the first things we did was the creative information session. We just gave a brief overview of the project and what we're trying to do here. We've also done project advisory meetings with a smaller group of community members that have joined and given us some really insightful advice on what they would like to see. We've done a bus route tour, which involves some community members, and also invited some artists that are here today, where we actually drove along the route on one of their new buses. It's an awesome, great new bus that they just got for the route. We took the whole path and went through and saw the different potential stop locations and what was around them. We've developed a survey with Sizemore, which has been wonderful. I believe it's been in the community for over a month and a half now, at least, if not 2 months. And we've gotten how many responses?
450.
450 responses just about, again, what your community would like to see at these bus stops, and making sure that we're reflecting what you want and what you think are needs. And then we've also done another community meeting, again, similar style, is what we did just recently. And today we're talking about the design of the actual bus stop. So inviting you all again to be here and help us in walking through what are the actual specific elements that we need to start thinking about and incorporating in this project. So we brought on 5 arts and cultural ambassadors. Again, we have some artists today here. We have Shauna, who is sitting right there, and then we also have Susie Q. They're going to help us with the creative elements and trying to think about these not only in a logistical sense and in practical sense, but also in a sense of beauty and artistic elements that can help really bring conversation and excitement to the different locations where these stops are going to be at. Just some quick recaps. Some of the boards behind you show the information, some of the information that we've gathered from the engagement process that we've already taken off on. But the community meeting 1, some summaries from that. What did people already mention to us? We're thinking about security. We're thinking about adequate shelter. We're thinking about accessibility, ADA accessibility. We're thinking about technology. How do we get access to the information for the bus routes so that everybody that visits them or is at them currently knows when the next bus is coming, when it's leaving, and where it might take them. We're thinking about display screens, access to water. One of my favorite things was the student workshop that we did recently, actually here at McDonough. Zarek, one of our other teaching assistant art teachers, helped us with that, where we allow the students to dream a little bit. And this was anywhere from middle school to high school age group. And they came back with just all these really beautiful community-centered and focused ideas of access to food and shelter and water and safety. A lot of the things we've already talked about, but if you want to take a look at some of those drawings, they're really wonderful and inspiring to see. So these are just some of the things that we're starting to talk about when getting down to the actual designs of these bus stops. We've also been going through some other case studies that are successes around the world. Again, thinking about creative elements, is it something where we have a sheep on the roof and then it's named by the community, which is that first example picture that you see there? Or is it something more technological that allows you to charge your phone and plug in or read a book while you wait? These are all different things that we can start thinking about when talking about the actual design of the bus stops. Again, student workshops, I mentioned that earlier. We engaged over 80 students. It was really wonderful. A lot of ideas around comfort, accessibility, safety, access, inclusivity. So that's kind of where we're at now. And today I'm going to pass it off to Deanna. Today we're hoping to hear more about what you would like to see. Yeah.
The only other thing I'll mention on engagement is we did go to businesses along the route. And so we spent several hours with 3 folks from our Sizemore team, stopping at businesses, talking to employees, talking to people who were just there shopping, and just asking, would you use this bus stop? What would you use it for? What would you like to see there in terms of amenities and in terms of artistic creativity and style? And so we have been capturing those comments as well throughout this process. So before we get to the tables, I want to go over the stops and the stop locations. So what we started with, and you can see in a map at the back of the room as well if you want to look a little closer, but we looked at the route, we looked at all the assets on the route, whether that's a shopping district, that's a school, a public facility, a park. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at where all the activities are happening and where people are going. And we overlaid that ultimately with where the stops are recommended. We then took the bus tour stop and we talked to our project advisory group, and they have identified where they think the priority stop should be, at least a short list. And that's what we want to clarify with you all. We want to make sure those are the right ones and make sure we come up with the top 3. So for the city of Stockbridge, the most popular stop that people were interested in is right in front of City Hall, this number 20. And I think we have some pictures of that. So here we're zooming in. Here's City Hall and the amphitheater. And then some street views of where that is. But that being in an area that people envision a lot of traffic coming in and out of in terms of potential bus stop users, an area that gets a lot of prominence, visibility. Someone going to an amphitheater, a show at the amphitheater may want to take the bus. So having that option and accessibility, and also being able to create something really visually attractive there that talks and represents to the city of Stockbridge was something people saw as an opportunity. So that is the one that has been identified for Stockbridge so far. We're open to other ideas and concepts tonight. If that is still the chosen one, we'd like to continue to develop design on that. For Henry County, 2 stops have been highlighted from our conversations. One is item number 10 here, which is at Judico and Tunis Road. This is actually just down the street from Eagles Landing Middle School and High School. And there's some shops around there as well, so accessibility for students, people going to the schools for different activities. And then number 6 is in front of some new development on Jonesboro Road. If you're familiar with where the city barbecue is, and there's a lot of new development popping up over there in terms of commercial uses as well as residential, some higher density residential. So individuals who maybe are going to work or coming from that location, going to another location for work, we thought those were 2 priority sites. And so this is the site near the new city barbecue, which I think is not in this aerial, but I think sits right here. And some street view images of that. And this is near the high school. This is actually completed with construction. It is a medical facility, outpatient medical facility. And so there's also accessibility to that if the bus stop is there, and then the high school and middle school sit right about here. And some street view images of that. And then when we move into McDonough, the 2 areas that people were most interested in seeing a bus stop is first at the McDonough Square in front of the Henry County Courthouse. There are a lot of county facilities there, there's city facilities, so accessibility to those, and then as events happen on the square, having access to that as well. And then also at Alexander Park, near the railroad tracks, there's a really nice trail there, so accessibility to the trail, to the park. There being visuals and cues to the rail and to the trains, so maybe even a platform component to that to watch the trains go by.
Is where it says potential stops, is that an error? I see gardenias. Was that recommended, gardenias instead of geraniums?
Oh, I meant to correct that. Thank you. Someone else mentioned that. Yes, I have it wrong. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. Geraniums. And so this is some views of that stop here being the county facility sitting here, the square sitting here, and some street views of that area. And then this being near Alexander Park, the rail coming through right here, the trail adjacent to that, and some street views. So before I get into the design workshop, any overarching questions or comments that you want to make sure we cover before we go to our tables? I think at this point, it hasn't been determined exactly where the bus stop will be, so I think it can be in either location. I think this is an opportunity for us to explore that a little bit about where that stop might be situated, and then start designing. Now, it may shift because there is the simultaneous study going on with VHB where they're looking at the topography and access issues and the right-of-way to make sure there's room to be able to put a bus stop. We'll look at some of that as part of this study, but overall the design we anticipate could move from either location if it moves slightly.
It's going to give access to people, for people who can't get around. One of the main entrances also on this route is Piedmont Henry Hospital. I am the transit director and my assistant director is here. I can tell you how many calls that we're getting that we cannot accommodate because someone just can't get to the hospital. They can't get to a doctor's appointment. They can't get to the store. So if you're along that route, that's something that may help. You have parents who, there's schools along this route. Hey, I can't take an Uber to get my kid from school in the rain. This is going to help. It's economical and it's affordable. So yes, it is coming. But again, we don't want to force it. We want to make sure that the community input is here and they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. If that answers your
Still
question.
being able to can't state how frequently and what's the timing for the buses out?
Yeah, we're still working on the other project side of what the headways are. We had initially talked about it being a half hour, but with the beautiful traffic we have here, it might be more like 45 minutes, but there is going to be a bus that starts at each end of the route and runs continuously all day. So you won't be waiting an hour and a half for another bus to come around.
I think Ty covered it pretty well, but as he mentioned, we've been working on the bus route at VHB. We did 1 or 2 bus tours, just the technical team went out and looked at all the stops, made sure we could actually park a bus there. Ty actually was kind enough to drive the bus for us. He's a great driver, so. And we looked at topography and made sure that we weren't going to stop the bus and then there's a drop off of 20 feet and things of that nature. So the stops and the route are pretty set in stone. There are some opportunities to open it and move stuff, and we do want feedback from y'all tonight on where you think it might be. If we moved it maybe 100 feet this way, it would serve something that we missed or anything along those lines.
And I also want to add, because we have also partnered, we have talked about it with the cities too. There has been some conversation about other access to other areas of the county, like the shopping centers. That is something that we're going to look at as well, but this will be an issue. We may have what we would call feeder routes that maybe go from one end to maybe from McDonough to Jonesboro Road to where the shopping centers are, or the express bus lot, which is in Avalon Parkway or JCPenney. So there's still conversations going on about those. Nothing is off the table, but this is the start of it, and we're going to add on to it. There might be someone that want to go to Tanger Outlet. This is the start of something, and then I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to help with traffic. I think it's going to help with access.
The first one is our transportation table, and so they will focus on all of the stops, looking at accessibility, streetscape, making sure that those stops are technically appropriate, and kind of getting input on that. The next table, that table is right here. If you look at Ashlyn and Allison will lead that table, and Anna will too, if you want to raise your hands. Awesome. Table 2 is the Henry County station. And if you can point, okay, perfect. And Abigail and Susie Q will be at that table, and they're already over there, perfect. And that will look specifically at the Henry County stops, and try to hone in on one stop and start designing it. The third table is Stockbridge, which we actually have our McDonough folks sitting at. So we'll switch it out. Yeah, look at what we keep moving. So Stockbridge then is over Eleanor, maybe? Oh, right, we're gonna switch. So where Eleanor is now is where Stockbridge will be. And so we'll look specifically at the Stockbridge stops there. And then our fourth table is where Mayor Vincent and Sylvia from McDonough are sitting now, and that will be our McDonough station. And so what we have planned here tonight is a series of questions, and we'll have to adjust our timing a little bit, so maybe we'll take the first 15 minutes to do this first series of questions. And what we're trying to look at in this first session is, one, make sure we know what we want our priority site or priority stop to be. So in some cases there's only one. Let's make sure that's the right one. In most cases there's two options, and so we want to look at, out of those two, is there one that we really want to make sure is the stop that we focus in on, that we want it to be that creative placemaking stop for the first pass. Now, it should be noted, all the stops along the route maybe one day can be a creative placemaking stop, but we need to start somewhere. And so out of this plan, we're going to end up choosing one that we can find and recommend some grant funding for. We want to look at these three as being implementable sooner than later, so that each jurisdiction has a showcase piece. But ultimately, we would love to see every stop have some creativity, some art elements, and all the components that would make it safe, healthy, and viable for individuals to use and feel comfortable at. But back off that topic and into the actual questions, like I said, we want to make sure we've got the priority sites right. And then we can look at some case studies. We've got them at the tables, we've got them on boards. But what is it, especially at the transportation table, what is it that you want to see in terms of streetscape components? What kind of accessibility do we need for these stops? What infrastructure is existing that we want to try to connect to? And so the transportation table will explore that more in depth. And then in each of our jurisdiction tables, Henry, Stockbridge, and McDonough, we will then start looking at the case studies as well. What inspires you in terms of the components and the art components? And then what components are important to you in terms of safety, comfort, and beauty? Our second design session will dig a little bit deeper, where we'll actually start talking about what does this look like at that stop. And so we'll revisit those questions in a minute, but I want to go ahead and get everyone started. You're welcome to stay at one table the whole time. You're welcome to move around. We will have representatives from our consultant team manning every table and keeping the conversation or drawing going. So with that, I encourage you to go to the table you're most interested in.